Girls, girls. Girls, girls, teenage immigrants, tell me, where'd you work last night? Somebody tell me. Come on, Rosie! Sarah! Daisy! Washington and Green in the factory where the door kept locked by greed. Oh, girls, girls, teenage immigrants, tell me, where'd you go in the fire? Rosaria, Tessie, Katarina, somebody tell me. I jumped to the street where my bones and concrete meet. The sewer my blood runs through. I jumped to the street where my bones and concrete meet. The sewer my blood runs through. Girls, girls, teenage immigrants, tell me of your New York dreams. Antonietta, Celia, Annie, Rosaria, somebody tell me. Well, I ran from poverty, persecution, misery. We were starving, needed a buck. I got on a boat to try my luck. I made it across the sea to the wave of liberty. Worked a triangle factory in New York garment industry, where amber waves of flame caught me. So I dove for the sky, broken window promises, spring air. I prayed, New York City, catch me. We were body makers, sleeve setters, collar makers, cuff setters, yoke setters, buttonhole makers, tuckers, closers, hemmers, joiners, finishers, presses, button sewers, lace runners, embroidery trimmers, thread trimmers, sample makers, makers, joiners, fasteners, finishers. Oh, girls, girls, teenage immigrants, tell me, how burning hot is greed? Come on, tell me. Sadie! Oh, Lena! Josie! Margaret! Well, our breath caught the fire, hair and lace, the flames became our names. Our breath caught the fire, hair and lace, the flames, and cinders became our names. Our breath caught the fire, hair and lace, the flames, and cinders became our names. Of all the names, they were mostly Rosie. This is Rosewater.
Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Welcome very much. Thank you so much for being here today for today's installment of Tell Me a Story, a City Lore Salon with Annie Lanzillotto. I'm Molly Garfinkel, co-director at City Lore, a cultural and community advocacy nonprofit based in the Lower East Side, the neighborhood where many of the victims of the Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire called home. The video you just watched was actually filmed by me as my first official assignment for City Lore in 2011, 100 years to the day after the Triangle fire occurred. On March 25th, City Lore's founding director and my mentor, Steve Zeitlin, put a mini DV recorder in my hand and said, "Go to Green in Washington to film the event." I was brand new to New York, so being in the Lower East Side, I knew I was south and east of something, but what exactly, I wasn't really sure. One thing I knew for sure is how much I didn't know. Over the last 11 years, I hope I can say that I've learned a lot, including that 146 young garment workers, mostly daughters of Jewish and Italian families from the nearby Lower East Side, lost their lives in the fire. The tragedy inspired efforts to advance worker safety and improve working conditions through the passage of progressive laws and the organizing of strong unions. I learned that the building where the fire took place has been the site of regular commemorations since the 50th anniversary of the fire in 1961. I also learned that I have roots in the Lower East Side. My maternal grandfather, Lou Kramer, was born on Essex and Hester Streets in 1908. His entire family had lost everything in the pogroms when they fled from the Kamenets-Podolsk region of Western Ukraine, then ruled by Russia. So in the Lower East Side, my grandfather, his 7 siblings, and the rest of the family members were sent out to earn money. Lou hawked gum at the age of 4, and his older brother, Jack, sold flowers. Lou's aunt Gussie worked as a seamstress in a Lower East Side garment factory. And I learned that in 2003, the former Ash Building, now NYU's Brown Building, was designated a New York City landmark. At that time, City Lore and others proposed that this building should be designated a landmark because the physical structure conveys what is important about it, the memory of the fire and the political organizing that followed. It's an important story to be included in the official public memory of the city. For a long time after the building was designated, the hearing was remembered by Landmarks Preservation Commission staff just by the range of people who came to testify, certainly not just preservation groups, but also historians, descendants, and members of garment worker unions who already had annual ceremonies to commemorate the day of the fire, and many others. This was also the city's first landmark connected to organized labor. Today, we celebrate the launch of the new book, Talking to the Girls, Intimate and Political Essays on the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire, edited by Edvige Giunta and MaryAnne Trasciatti, and published by New Village Press. This book has been described as a written memorial to the Triangle Fire. The essays in the book coalesce around memoiristic moments where commitment to triangle activism and personal stories intersect. Writing can transform our relationship to the past by generating not just new perspectives, but new feelings. I'd like to first introduce the book editors. Edvige Giunta is a first-generation immigrant who remembered the fire in 1976 while airing the first episode of a feminist radio program she hosted in her Sicilian hometown, Gela, and a year later, when she participated in feminist marches on the streets of Catania. MaryAnne Trasciatti, president of the Remember the Triangle Fire Coalition, is the granddaughter of immigrants who listened to stories about her mother's work in a dress factory and later learned about Triangle in the middle school in the late 1970s. And today we'll be hearing from some of the book contributors, including Martin Abramowitz, who reflects on the ethical burden of telling the story of his father, a cutter who testified at the trial of the factory owners and might have been responsible for inadvertently starting the fire. Ying Chen, who writes of her role in helping organize the 1982 Chinese garment workers' strike in New York, and her involvement in Triangle as a point of connection and solidarity among women garment workers in the International Ladies Garment Workers Union across ethnic, racial, and historical lines. Richard Joon Yoo, who traces his journey through the process of creating the memorial and connects that memory work with gathering the traces of immigrant memory in his Korean-American family. And Annie Lanzillotto, who considers the vulnerability of 21st century Triangle activist artists like herself, who have lost their housing in the boom of gentrification. And now I'd like to call Annie into the room. Hey, Annie? Annie, are you there?
Hi, Molly. That was beautiful intro.
Hi, Annie. Great to see you.
You're going to throw me the ball?
I'm going to throw you the ball so to make it
Easy this
official.
time. I know
Okay,
you got Lower East Side roots, but take it
okay.
easy.
Under.
Okay, I got it.
Great.
That's the real one. Thanks, Molly.
You got it.
I'm sure your ancestors, bounced and knew this smell. Oh, we got to feed the meat.
Oh.
Molly, I don't have any quarters.
Okay. I've
Can you
got
lend me a
two.
quarter?
Yep, just as my last
We need an
two. I'm not
hour.
going to use
Give
them
me a
for.
quarter.
All right, here you go.
Give me
Got
one
it?
at a time. All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for this hour together. Let's make it the best hour of the day. All right, we're good. Molly, who do you invoke today?
Today, I'd like to invoke the memory of Molly Gerstein, who perished in the fire at age 17, one of the youngest victims.
Molly Gerstein. Okay, and I'm going to invoke a couple of people. I'm going to dedicate my hour today to Joey Zito and Gaspare Motilaro and Daisy Lopez Fitzy. Joe Zito was an elevator operator, and he testified that when the fire broke out and they heard the girl screaming, him and Gaspare were running 2 elevators at the ground floor. They could have just stepped out of the building. With one step, they could have been on the sidewalk of Washington Place. Instead, they looked at each other, according to Joe, and without a word, pulled the rope and made the elevators go up into the smoke and flames. And according to Joe, the thought on his mind was those poor girls. They took their civilian job and they became first responders. And they made as many trips as they can. They saved as many people as died in the fire. So without this act of civilian heroism, the death toll would have been double. And at the end of the 15 minutes or half hour, Joe Zito lay injured, cut by fabric shears, half dead, drowning in the bottom of the elevator shaft. And he was pulled out, and then he was put under arrest. And it took the district attorney to come and say, this man's a hero. Get him the best medical treatment and get him immediately to St. Vincent's Hospital. And he suffered from trauma the rest of his life from that day. Daisy jumped. And Daisy, she was from Jamaica, and she survived 2 more days at St. Vincent's Hospital. And she was able to speak. And Daisy was saving money for her new marriage. And she wanted to get in a few extra shifts to save a little bit more money. So today, I hold those 3 in my memory. Gaspare Motilaro was from Villa Francasicula in the province of Agrigento, Sicily. And Joe Zito was from Sere in the province or provincia de Salerno. And Daisy was from Jamaica. And now I'm going to bring in an author and editor of this book, Edvige Giunta. Okay, thanks, Molly. Edvige, I'm going to throw it easy so you don't have to worry. Okay, here it comes, Edvige. Easy pop fly.
Got it.
Good catch.
Well, I've had a good teacher. Thank you, Annie.
Edvige, who do you invoke today?
Today, I invoke Isabella Tortorelli from Armento, Basilicata. She was 17 when she died in the fire. And she was my first triangle girl, the first name I learned. But I also want to invoke the memory of the workers, the women who died in a factory fire in Newark, New Jersey, a few months before the Triangle Fire.
Isabella Tortorelli, and the work is in New Jersey. Okay, Edvige, could you bring in Martin?
Yes.
Throw it easy to him, Edvige.
Okay, Martin, where are you? Okay, I'm gonna throw you the ball. You ready?
I'm ready.
Oh,
that?
look at him.
Nice catch.
Nice grab.
Nice throw. So I'm
Martin. Hi, Martin.
Hi, Eddie. So I'm going to invoke the memory of my father, Isidore Abramowitz, who survived the fire.
Isidore Abramowitz. Thank you, Martin.
Yes.
So, Martin, who are you going to call now?
I'm going to call Ying Chen. May, are you there? Are you ready?
Wait just a second.
Okay. I'm holding on to this.
1 second. I know, hold it.
Martin wrote a book for everyone out there on Jewish Major League Baseball players. So I know he's got a good arm. So take it easy, Martin.
All right. In Brooklyn, we threw very well.
All right,
May, are you there? Yes.
I'm ready.
Okay,
Yeah.
here it comes. You got it.
Hey!
I got it.
Nice catch.
Hey.
May, who are you invoking?
I invoke the memory of Rosie Grosso, age 16. She was the first person that I chalked at her home in Greenwich Village. She's one of the youngest victims. And I also the memories of the wars in Atlanta, Georgia, mostly Asian women who were killed in an act of senseless violence 1 year ago. So Rosie and the women and the workers in Atlanta.
Rosie Grasso and the workers in Atlanta.
So, thanks. And I'm looking for Richard.
Hello, May.
Oh, yay. I got a special
I think I'm ready.
ball to throw
I
to
think
you.
I'm ready. I think
You
I'm
ready?
ready. I think I'm
Here
ready.
we
I
go.
can do this. Ah!
Whoa.
That was intense,
who-
May. You got a strong arm.
That's right. See, I have
You're
this
like a
little
giant.
blue ball in it.
Yeah, you're like a giant.
And who will you invoke, Richard?
I am invoking the collective ribbon participants. A project a couple of years ago. Everyone, all 400 of them in total, have contributed to the fabrication of the Triangle Fire Memorial. So I invoke the collective ribbon participants for looking back to the 146 as we change the future for the better.
Great. The collective ribbon participants.
Yes. Yes. So,
Hey, bring in MaryAnne, Richard.
MaryAnne, where are you, MaryAnne? Come in. Can you hear me?
Eccomi qua.
Are you ready for this?
I don't know, but I'll
The big
try.
one for me. Okay. Ugh.
Whoa! Woo! Shrunk. Change color. Thank you, Richard. I invoke the first two names of the women that I ever chalked in the Greenwich Village, Francesca Maiale and her younger sister, Bettina. Francesca was 21 and Bettina was 17 when she died in the fire. So one of the girls to whom we dedicate this book.
All right. Francesca Maiale and her sister, Bettina Maiale. The Maiale sisters. All right, MaryAnne, throw back to me. All right, got it. All right, I'm gonna tell you all a story now that we're all in the room. And this is a New York story. And becoming an activist for the Triangle Fire, memory and memorializing in ephemeral ways, and now, a more permanent way on the building, has brought me into this circle of, the best New Yorkers I've ever met. So I'm very humbled and grateful. The editors, Edvige and MaryAnne, asked a difficult question in this book. They wanted us to each write about, where our personal lives intersected with this public memory, and how the memory of this past affected us in the present and changed who we are. And I had to think about how I got involved in Triangle. And it was 2007, and I had just lost my apartment. And what I didn't realize is that I was living through an epic redefinition of New York City. Buildings were going to what in common parlance was called market rate. And all the full-time artists that I knew in my circle who were working class and who didn't own property, all of us were displaced. So my landlord said to me, I'll give you 6 months to get out. And I thought he was being generous. And I thought, okay, no problem. We'll just go to the next place. And then I walked out into the street and I couldn't believe how the city had changed. And I ended up losing my family, my dogs, my partnership, my friends, my neighbors, my community. The fabric of my community was shredded. So I called my state representative, who at the time was Eric Adams, and 5 of us went to meet with Eric. And he said, walk around and find abandoned buildings and write down the addresses. Then come back to me. If New York State owns any of those buildings, maybe we could do something. Maybe you, if you do the footwork, could do something. I had had 2 major cancers. I had lung damage and heart damage from radiation and chemotherapy and 10 surgeries. My friends were also aging and had illnesses. So what happened, we all ended up on the floor or the couch of friends and family, some out of state. And the 2000 census of the United States had 5 million people as couch homeless. And I became one of them. And then I began to chalk. Ruth Sergel had a genius project that's still going, and anyone in this room can join, where every year on March 25th, you get assigned a name and you find where those people lived, the triangle workers, where they lived in New York City, and you chalk whatever you know about them outside their house. Meanwhile, in Italy, similar things were going on. Street names were being named for women who died of violence. A big movement of the word femminicidio, the killing of women, from all kinds of violence, domestic violence, workplace violence. And the group Toponomastica Femminile has a mission to put women's names in the public sphere, street signs, plaques, marble plaques. And when I went to Sicily, I didn't realize how the girls of Triangle would call me, but this is what happened. I raised money to go to Sicily on a book tour. When I got there, I went into a church in Enna, which is a mountain town. And the gorgeous artwork, statues, gilded ceiling, mosaics, it's dizzying what the human hand and eye and heart is capable of creating. But what captured my attention was a ladder in the back of the church. It was made from trees, maybe cypress trees. And the ladder was tongue and groove and went all the way to the top apse of the cathedral. And I'm sitting in church, not thinking anything, but staring at it, staring at it, staring at it. And then I realized that ladder was tall enough that it could have got the girls from the 8th, 9th, and 10th floor to the firemen's ladders, which reached the 6th floor. All they needed was that ladder in Enna as an extension, made out of a tree, that handmade ladder. And I started crying in the church in Enna. Now, most Americans maybe would go on vacation in Sicily. Maybe they'll send you postcards from the beach. Not me. This is what I got. This is Sicily. My map of Sicily is wounded. Each of these marks is the birthplace of a worker who died in the Triangle Factory. These are all girls and women, young women. And in the center of Sicily is the umbilical of Sicily, Enna. And whose name is there? And I didn't know. Giuseppina Camerata, a teenager from Enna, where that ladder made me cry. Edvige has said with this book, the girls are talking. And I feel shaken to my core when things like this happen. And when I look at this map, what I don't see is the East Coast. Where are the immigrants from the East Coast? And then I realize, oh yeah, there was a volcano, there was an earthquake in 1908. 80,000 people died. No wonder there were no triangle workers who died from Messina, for example. So I'm shaken even just telling you about it. And my job today is just to move the program along so you could hear the brilliance from everyone and the heartfelt work that everyone in this room is doing, heart and soul work. So I'm gonna move it along and I'm gonna bring in first Edvige Giunta. And I'm gonna ask you, Edvige, to tell us about your coming to consciousness as a young girl in Sicily about Triangle.
Thank you, Anne. It's just so moving to look at your map. And I was thinking of our conversation earlier this morning and the image of the bloody flower. I did not know that the fire had happened in a factory called the Triangle Waste Company, that many of the dead were close to me in age, or that most of the Italian girls who had died left from my island, where they sat at kitchen tables eating spaghetti with tomato sauce, just like me, watching their mothers, helping their mothers. I was 17 and had become a feminist a year earlier, my activism spurred by the anger at the violence against women and girls, clandestine abortions, a gender disparity even within progressive left-wing groups. I had always chewed the bread of politics. My father had fed it to us, but this was different. This was about women. At lunchtime, we always watch the news. I sit across from my mother, who doesn't sit. She runs from the stove to the table, back and forth. I sit to the right of my father. The television is across from him. I perk up when I hear the words women, factory, fire, feminism. The image of Italian feminists on the streets of Rome or Milan is on the screen in my peripheral vision. I turn to look and take it all in. This is my first encounter with Triangle, a reconstructed memory. Where else and how else would I have heard about Triangle in my Sicilian hometown? Likely it went this way. It was March 8, 1977. 4 days earlier, I recorded my first feminist program for Radio Gela, Honorably Exploited. Now I knew how I would open the second episode. And this is an entry from the script that I dutifully wrote in my journal. International Women's Day, which takes as its symbol the women who were fighting against the politics of exploitation and submission and died in a factory fire, awakens public opinion to the situation of women today and highlights the importance of a united fight of women of all nations and social classes. This is where my Triangle story begins. The roots are older and deeper and dig across geographies. They have crawled under the ocean all the way to La America. And here we are, with the collective fruit of the labor of 19 contributors, 2 editors, 1 publisher, countless friends and colleagues. and the ghosts, who are the heart of this book. Tell us a story. This is what MaryAnne and I asked our authors. Tell us your triangle story. Talking to the Girls is not a collection of oral histories or interviews or biographies or autobiographies or scholarly articles. It's a collection of personal essays, exploratory writings into the ghost country of memory, story and history holding hands to reveal how, as individuals, we understand our visceral relationship to this singular event that occurred in New York City one spring Saturday, 111 years ago. Talking to the Girls is heartfelt storytelling rooted in archival and historical research, in art history and pedagogy, in activism as community, is the shifting, layered truth of personal memory finding its seat at the table of history.
Thank you, Edvige. So you were 17 when you wrote that?
Yes, well, not this whole thing, the quote.
Thank you, Edvige.
Thank you.
All right, should we bring in Martin?
Yes, Martin.
Thank you, Eddie. I'm so moved by your story and by Annie, by yours. I'm really humbled to participate with you in this project and in this program. Mac, would you show the photo of my father and his family? So the gentleman on the left is Isidore Abramowitz, my father. This is a typical, I would say, the teens and maybe early 20s immigrant family photo. That's his brother, that's their mother and grandmother who came to the United States together without the man in the household in 1902. My father survived the fire. I'm going to read to you for a moment from my small memoir. Some of the Triangle Girls may have known my father, Isidore Abramowitz, although they worked on separate floors. They may have made small talk or even flirted with him as they waited for the elevator. Isidore survived the Triangle Fire. He may also have started it. Why am I telling this story? Friends gently ask me if I really want to do this. My frail 90-year-old brother fears for our father's good name. Our father's experience in the fire has actually been partially documented and suspicion already cast and mercifully forgotten. Why revive it now? The obvious answer is that I have a few fragments to add to the story, and the tragedy that was the Triangle Fire demands to be known and remembered in as much detail as we can bring to it. We owe it to the girls and to the 17 men who perished with them. Even as I inch into print, I know there's deeper stuff at work. This story and a few earlier fragments of childhood memories are all I have left of my father, who died in 1947 when I was 6 years and change. I'm certain that the fire was a central moment in his life. How could it not have been? Thinking about him and the fire has both enabled and forced me to try to understand the mystery of this man's life. It's been a way, however neurotically and unsuccessfully, to have my father back. So that there he is. He either knew that it was his match, his ash that ignited the fire, or he wondered about it. He testified at the trial of Harrison Blank, where the testimony mercifully the questioning did not focus on him, it focused on the landlords. That's the story.
Martin, first of all, I've never heard, this story or anything like it. You've been doing a lot of genealogy research. So were there one or two Abramowitzes at the Triangle Fire? history keeps changing and you're on an exploration and this saga continues. What do you
this story is not over yet. I say in the memoir that I can't be certain whether in fact it was his ash. I had been looking for another Isidore Abramowitz, and the only way that I knew to do that was to go through the personnel files of Triangle, which of course were also destroyed by that fire. So I basically left in my memoir the question open, and as you know, we've got a lot of my excerpts from my memoir have gotten a lot of attention in the New York Jewish press, and it's been syndicated nationally in Jewish press. And I got 2 emails just 2 or 3 days ago from 2 genealogists. And one of them said, had the brilliance, I fault myself for not having thought of this. So this person went and looked for Isidore Abramowitz in New York City in 1911, found 30 of them, of whom one apparently worked at the Triangle factory. Not exactly clear, but more conversation is needed with this genealogist. What's interesting, however, is that this other Isidore Abramowitz is listed in the census as non-English speaking. And the Isidore Abramowitz who testified at the trial of Harris and Blank spoke English and did not require a translator. So you know what? We may never know this. In my heart, I hope we find a way to find that it wasn't him, because that would mean that presumably that he knew it wasn't him, and that his life was not as tortured as I imagined him to have been. I'd lose my story, but I would gain a perspective on my father's happiness and peace of mind. That would be very important to me. So we'll keep you posted.
Well, Martin, you know, first of all, we're going to show you a baby picture. Mac has that ready. So that's you and your father. And
so what's interesting about this picture is he's in his late 40s, and this is a picture of an older man who had some difficulty in his life. He was to die in not too many but 5 years from then. Annie, you pointed out, I think I pointed out in my memoir as well, look at that hand, look at that right hand around my legs. Big, strong cutter's hand.
Yes. Tell everyone, what does a cutter do and why is that hand so strong? What was the cutters in the factories?
Well, the cutter applied, well, did a couple of things. One is perhaps with help, took these large rolls of textile and folded them one over the other until there was a big pile of them, and overlaid a pattern to them, and then cut through them, sometimes by hand and sometimes with a machine. But it required great strength and dexterity, and you had to be on your feet moving up and down that table, all day.
Well, Martin, I admire you. This is the bravest piece of memoir I've read in so long, because
there's no bravery here. I just had to tell the story.
I'm talking, excuse me. Why it's brave as a memoir piece of writing is because you delve into what you don't know.
Yeah.
You delve into what you may never know. And that's right. Brave writing. And I can't wait to read your book on Major League Baseball.
Thank you, Annie.
And I want to say I also admire that you're taking your heartache and questions, and you're on the board of directors for Remember the Triangle Fire, and you're working to raise money to build this beautiful memorial that we're going to hear about that Richard designed. And so you're taking the wound and you're putting it to social justice action.
I'm honored to be contributing to that, yes.
And, so I'm just, happy to know you, Martin.
Same here, Annie. Thank you.
Be continued. Martin's going to keep writing and being interviewed all over the world. And we deal with our ancestors' wounds. That's what we do in memoir.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do. All right, Martin, your next job is you have to throw a good speedball to back to Manhattan here.
So who May, am I throwing to you now? All right. Who am I throwing to?
Yes, give May a chance. Let it be ready.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Be ready. I only play with people who are ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go.
Whoa.
All right.
Thank you.
Great. So May, who do you invoke today?
Well, I invoke Rosie Grasso, who was on your map. She was from Sicily.
Yes.
16 years old.
Here she is up here.
I chalked her name a couple of years ago with my grandkids in Greenwich Village and read a little bit about her. And I've never been to Sicily, but it makes me want to visit all those places.
Well, bring good boots, because she's from a hill town called Cerami. So we might have to hike up that road depending on the weather. So
okay,
we have to be.
Okay, I'll go with you, Annie.
Okay.
You can
All
be
right,
my
May.
tour guide. Yeah.
So tell us, May, tell us about your journey.
Okay, first of all, I'm really honored to be a contributor to this book, but also to be part of this storytelling today. I'm going to read a few paragraphs of the opening of my book. And as a preface, I also want to say I wanted to invoke the memories of those poor workers in Atlanta who went to work like they do every day and then were shot and killed in a senseless act of violence. And the anniversary just passed. And there's a lot of hate against Asian Americans that we're dealing with. So in my story, I worked for the union, and I'm surrounded by my union swag, wearing my union shirt and my diamond pin on this side. We represented at that point Local 2325, which was the original Local 25 of the Triangle factory period, represented a large number of immigrant garment workers throughout the decades. There were waves of membership from the American South, African Americans, from Puerto Rico. And then by the 1970s and 80s, when I started working for the union, Chinese Americans. So I'm going to read a few paragraphs, and it starts this way. The Chinese sewing workers told me the biting wind came from 146 ghosts. On a cold, windy day in late March 1985, I stood with a crowd of union leaders, workers, and retirees on Washington Place, near Washington Square Park in Greenwich Village. NYU students rushed by and looked at us, wondering what was happening. The fire truck raised its ladder up, 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 but it could not reach the floors where the people once worked. Bagpipes played Amazing Grace. The fire department officer rang the bell as each victim's name was called. I felt so moved, so sad, so cold, and so committed to making people care about the lives of young immigrant women workers. Again, in the 1990s, on a blustery day in late March, I stood on Canal Street in New York's Chinatown, where a huge crowd had gathered around a fire truck for another commemoration of the Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire. At that time, I worked for the education department of Local 2325 of the ILGWU, and we were conducting workplace fire drills. There were hundreds of factories along Canal Street in dozens of old 5 to 10 story brick buildings. This year, a brave colleague stood at the window on an upper floor and waved her hand, yelling, "Help, help." The big fire truck raised its ladder. It slowly extended up, up, up to the window. A fireman climbed up the ladder, hoisted her over his shoulder, and carried her down safely to the street. Cameras flashed, and everyone cheered. My life experiences and the women in the union have taught me the importance of collective efforts, teamwork, and mutual support that I did not learn in school. Collectivity was not part of our curriculum. When I was a kid, I often thought that being a girl was a big disadvantage. Being Chinese and from an immigrant family made it even harder. Within the family, adults, especially fathers and grandfathers, placed the highest value on boys to carry down the family name. And outside in school and the neighborhood in suburban Massachusetts, I was sometimes taunted as a chink, an enemy from behind the bamboo curtain. And even though I was born in the United States, I was often treated as a foreigner. So it's no surprise that I grew up rooting for the underdog. And that led to a career with the union, which in the 1970s and 80s, a new wave of Chinese immigrants came into the New York garment industry. And we had our uprising of 20,000 in 1982, when the Chinatown sewing workers went on strike. And our slogan was, "We are one," which showed our unity, our solidarity with the garment workers all around the city, past and present and future. So that's my story.
May, we'll put up some photos. Mackenzie, you have some archival photos of May Chen. And May, you're going to teach us how to say "we are one," right? Let me hear how you said it in the street.
Okay. Well, these are workers at the triangle ceremony, and my grandchildren chalking Rosie Grasso. This is a couple of young pictures of me in graduate school at UCLA and with a daycare center.
So that's you with the megaphone?
Becoming an activist with a very good friend. And we were fighting gentrification, by the way, Annie. So your story about being a tenant and kicked out of your housing kind of goes way back.
Yes. And Max, stay here for a second. May, tell us about this photo, the women's names or anything you want to tell us.
Sure. I mean, from left to right, that's Lana Chung, who is a very dear colleague and still works in the union. Rodrigo Coronel, Mrs. Chan, Mrs. Moy, Mrs. Lee. Holding the sign, Agnes Wong, she's the head of our retirees club, Mrs. Lamb, and me. And we were standing at the table to give out flowers to the participants in the commemoration.
Beautiful. Okay, May, Mac, you can take the photos down. May, tell us how to say "we are one." How did you say it in the street? Like, what was your rally cry?
Okay. Well, the Chinese saying that we used is "Man Zhong Yat Sam," which means 10,000 people of one heart. So it's like unity, you could say. Man Zhong Yat Sam.
Okay, maybe the six of us could unmute and try to learn this. Okay, May, give it to us so we could try to give it back to you.
Okay. Man Zhong Yat Sam.
Man Zhong Yat Sam. All right.
Thank you.
10,000 hearts as one. Is that something?
That's right. Yep. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, May. Yes.
I'd like to call for a moment of silence at this time.
Yes.
For the triangle victims and all workers who have suffered and sacrificed.
Thank you. Thank you, May. And if you'd now call Richard into the room.
Okay, do I need to throw him a ball?
Oh, you certainly do.
Of course. I'm more than ever.
Are you ready, Richard?
I think so. There's only one way to know.
Whoa.
Ah! Again, in the face. Jeez. Okay, guys. Thank you. Everyone here is amazingly beautiful. It's incredible to be part of this story that continues after over 100 years. My name is Richard Joon Yoo. I'm one of the co-designers along with Uri Wegman of the Triangle Fire Memorial that everyone here has been fighting so fiercely to build. And the target is 2023 of March 25th. We will all be together and there, which would be incredible. I am going to read an excerpt from my chapter, Fabric of Memory. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
These memories are no longer solitary. The fabrication of the memorial was born from the labor of the hands of more than 400 participants and over 100 volunteers. Over 100 years after the fire, we gathered to reveal our personal relationship to Triangle and recognize all it had done before us. We build the memorial today for all that it continues to do for us today. The act of remembering reframes memory, reconstructing it with each recollection. Similarly, our relationship with a vessel of memory held in the hand, or a vessel of memory built tall on the schist of Manhattan, changes each time we encounter it. The Triangle Fire Memorial is designed to hinge on this fulcrum, pivoting between present and past, and tilting into the future. In remembering the Triangle Fire, we reframe our relationship to that which the fire brought to the forefront. Over 100 years ago, we reframe our relationship to our own present. Its presence on the urban landscape is but a sliver of sky, thin cuts into the chunks that make Manhattan. But what it does is potent. In remembering, we reframe ourselves with our passage to and across the Triangle Fire Memorial. The memorial reflects who we are now and changes who we may become. The Triangle Fire Memorial is what it does. It changes us. It changes what we do, how we work. It changes how we remember. It takes the deeply personal and private and thrusts it into public collective remembering. It manifests meaning from our current circumstance. It reminds us that we can at times make change happen, that we can nourish this change. This memorial does not remember people who died going to war. It remembers people who died going to work. It pays respect to immigrants looking to make a better life, the simple American promise that was betrayed. In this way, I think of it as a memorial for peace. It was like looking into a mirror, the reflection of myself after suffering amnesia. But in place of the mirror was this photo or scrap of paper, or the scarf with an orange and blue flower blossom print. I felt the texture at the ends of my fingertips. Is this my history? It is not. I do not possess this memory. The memory unleashed through the touch of 100-year-old fabric is not mine, it is my mother's. Looking at this photograph, in which I meet the gaze of a child I never met, but somehow am a part of, is like locking eyes with any child on the street for a single long, still breath. a sharp inward gasp. We share the street and the sky in that moment, and then we are gone. My relationship to history is through the witnessing of those who are remembering. The poignancy of their recollections is to me more real than what they held in their hands as they remembered. And so, my connection to the Triangle Fire is through a desire to focus on memory as a process, an action, a catalyst that can change us. We project meaning onto our personal world of objects and the shared world of the built environment. Every cut of thread is embedded with meaning belonging to someone. A fragment from a great aunt who perished in the fire evokes her wedding dress. She was to marry the week she died. A pillowcase, coarse thread and slightly gray, thinned through time, from a woman's great-grandmother who was a garment worker and witnessed the smoke of the fire around her block. Her great-niece wrote, "I imagine here on this pillow is where she rested her head for sleep the morning before, and the night after, she witnessed the Triangle Fire, wondering what was in store for her the next day she was to go to work." I tell my children, Lev and Jonah and Oriana, that they have consequence, that they can have an effect. Nothing is more frustrating than the sense that we have no choice in how the world may become. Over 100 years of anonymity for the site of the Triangle Fire has frustrated many who feel its impact on the world has been quelled. In fact, the effect of the Triangle Fire is amplified today. With the Triangle Fire Memorial in place in Manhattan, its presence is bold and wide open to the world. Like you, I can visit with my 3 children, Lev, Jonah, and Oriana, point to it and say, "This is ours, this is yours. The memorial for the Triangle Fire belongs to all of us." I had no idea I could do something. Me neither. Here is your needle and thread. Thank you. That was the excerpt. What we're looking at is the collective ribbon event. Over 400 participants from all over the world making a collective ribbon, which is literally the first step of the fabrication of the memorial. The memorial is under construction. I wanted to show you some slides of the process on the site, which has been really, really kind of breathtaking to behold. This is the corner of Green Street in Washington Place under the shed, the plaque showing the Brown building, intermingled with all of the structure of the shed that protects the sidewalk. Our fabulous fabricator, this is the sidewalk construction that they're rebuilding. They demoed the existing sidewalk, they're rebuilding the vault. This is our fabulous fabricator, Kurt, who is installing the stainless steel substructure of the memorial. It will be behind the granite of the facade that we're all familiar with. And it's gonna hold up the reflective panel. As part of this process, he spray painted in yellow the outline of all of these posts. And to me, I just loved seeing this because it was the ghost of the future. This was an outline of what was to become on the building, on the bones and flesh of the building. And it reminded me, of course, of Ruth's chalk here, I think 3 years ago, right before COVID. She chalked the silhouette of several of the girls on the sidewalk for the commemoration. So this to me felt like a similar process, except not of the past, but of the future, which is essentially the same process that all of us had embarked on when it came to making the Triangle Fire Memorial through the process of the collective ribbon. So yeah, that's all I wanted to share with you all.
Thank you, Richard. I love how you end that. Here is your needle and thread.
Yeah, that was
Richard,
our tool.
would you bring in MaryAnne to join you?
MaryAnne, are you ready?
I'm ready.
I know you're on point.
Ooh.
1, 2, 3.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for a beautiful event, Annie, and everyone. So I'd like to just repeat my my invocation. I'm invoking Francesca and Bettina Maiale, 2 young women sisters who died way too soon and whose names I chalked the very first time.
Time out. MaryAnne, I'm having a little trouble hearing you, so just speak up a little bit or make sure your volume's up, please. Thank you.
Okay, is it better now? I can't.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. So I also want to invoke my mother. And I can't do this kind of work without thinking of my mom, especially talking to the girls with Edvige. I felt like my mom was always present in this project because my mother was one of the girls. She didn't work at Triangle. She wasn't a New Yorker. She was an Irish-American Pennsylvanian, but she was one of the girls, one of the many girls, one of the too many girls who have worked in factories instead of going to school. One of the too many girls who still work in factories instead of going to school. She quit at 17 years old. She quit school to support her family. She came from a family, her dad was a coal miner and could not work anymore. She worked at Lee Manufacturing in Pittston, Pennsylvania. And Triangle was her story. It was a story that she knew and she cherished. And as she said to me, when she thought about her years working in the factory, we all knew we were safe because of what had happened to those poor girls at Triangle. And I've asked myself several times, how did she know? How did my mother in a small coal mining town in Pennsylvania know this story? Did she learn it from her mother, who was also a garment worker? She worked in a pants factory. My mom worked in a dress factory. Did she learn it from her union? She was a member of the ILGWU, the same union that May was a member and an organizer for. And the union did a lot of educational work. Is that how she learned the story of Triangle? I don't know. I never asked her. I wish I had. But somehow the Triangle story found its way to her and it comforted her. And I realize now that the story comforted me, because if it weren't for Triangle, I might not be here. Because if it weren't for the safety laws that were passed after Triangle, my mother might have been trapped in a burning building. And so I feel comforted as my mother was comforted by Triangle. And the Triangle story has that power. It can horrify us, but can comfort us also. But it has to be remembered and it has to be told. And talking to the girls is an act of remembrance and an act of telling, in which Eddie and I tell the story of the fire at the beginning, but then everyone else tells their Triangle story. And the book has been called a written memorial, and I love that because it is, I think, a written act of commemoration. It's also an act of telling, and it's a written act of telling, but for me, it's inseparable from another memorial that I've been intimately involved with, and that Richard so beautifully designed along with Uri Wegman and described and showed you in his slides. And that memorial is in the works. It's gorgeous. It's powerful, but it's not done. And like the book, it's a collective act from the choosing the design and beginning the process of fabricating the design with the collective ribbon to the actual fabrication of the metals and the engineering work and the fundraising and the strategizing. This is not a project that happens because of one person or two people. Like this book, it takes a village, and we are that village. And I'm so happy, so excited that this memorial, like this book, will make its way into the world, and it will tell the story of Triangle every single day of the year. that powerful story that kept my mother safe, that kept me safe, that keeps all of us safe, and that really deserves to be told. So I implore everyone who's here, please join with us in this project. We need you. We need everyone to build this memorial. You've seen links in the chat to make a contribution. Please do that if you can. But please spread the word also. That's another way to contribute. And please join us next year and in the next 12 months leading up to next year as we plan events and activities to bring this story to the world, as we bring the memorial to the world. Let's do it. Let's join together. As May's essay shows, with solidarity, nothing is impossible. So I really look forward to being with all of you again next year. Thank you very much.
Thanks, MaryAnne. Can you throw me the ball?
You got it.
All right.
Wow.
Thank you. What a team. What a team. We got to get on a field together. So now we are going to talk to some of the people in the audience, and everyone will be seen and heard in just a minute. First, we're going to hear, the publisher's going to join us. She's out on the street, Lynn Elizabeth. She is at the naming of the Francis Perkins Street. So let's see if I could get Lynn Elizabeth magically into the room. And then we will be promoting everybody. We're going to hear from Rose Imperato, and we'll see who else is out there. Okay. By the magic of Zoom, Mackenzie's going to make all the panelists equal, so we're in a group, we could talk. And Lynn Elizabeth and Rose Imperato will be joining us. Eddie, take the floor, start the conversation.
This was so incredibly moving. It's such an exhilarating but also surprising experience to hear our wonderful, wonderful collaborators, writers who have been working with us read these pieces. We have been working so closely for many years in this intense back and forth collaboration. And, it's interesting, to hear, MaryAnne, and I, of course, have talked many times about the Triangle Fire Memorial. I know how deeply, deeply involved she's been. And I think when we think of this book as also as a written memorial, there has been this very patient work of construction. Each of these essays was not like a smooth one-time delivery of a piece
Eddie, Eddie, I'm jumping in. We have from the street, Lynn Elizabeth at the Francis Perkins Street naming ceremony. Let's get our report from the publisher of this beautiful book. Lynn, tell us where you are. Let's see if we could hear her. Make sure your microphone's
okay. I think I got it on now. Hello, all. So I'm at the corner of 9th Avenue and 46th Street, and they're going to be renaming this section of 46th Street, Francis Perkins Place. And so you can see here there are various dignitaries who are collecting themselves. We have James Kaplan, who's a Hell's Kitchen Lower Manhattan historian. He is the one who really was the advocate for changing the street name. Eric Botcher, who's a New York City councilman, is hosting this event. And Susan Bateson, who's the vice president of the Francis Perkins Center and their treasurer, is going to be here speaking for the Francis Perkins Center. And Tomlin Coggeshall, contributor to Talking to the Girls, is going to be here because it's Tomlin Perkins Coggeshall. He is the only grandchild of Francis Perkins, and he is here down here from Maine to for the dedication. So at any rate, it's gonna be happening soon. And I will just say, as New Village Press director, it's a great honor to publish the book talking to the girls. Tremendous honor. And I'm grateful to be a part of your program, Annie. Thank you for hosting.
New Village Press is my favorite press, your social justice mission, and the gorgeousness of your books. Phenomenal work, Lynn. Phenomenal.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you.
All right, we're going to bring in Rose Imperato. Thank you, Lynn. Rose is going to tell us how you could contribute $5 to get the memorial built.
Oh my God, this day is incredible. Annie, Steve, Molly, City Lore. Oh my gosh, MaryAnne, I love you so much. Edvige, Martin, Ying Chen, Richard, you're all my favorite people. I'm so lucky to be here.
And Rose, as you talk, we're going to promote the whole audience so we can see and hear everybody.
Okay, good.
All right, take it away, Rosie. Tell us how we could give.
All right, I just have to say that Ernesto has been putting in the chat, and so has Megan, the GoFundMe page. And that was a grassroots fundraising effort because we want the entire world to be able to give. So we figured back when they were building the Statue of Liberty, they were asking for 5 cents. We're asking for $5, you know, inflation. But really, we need a lot. We got into the guts of the building, as Richard showed, and we found that we needed to bolster that poor building. You know, it's an old building. And so we're actually, looking for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, not that we have to get that all today, and we've got multiple attacks going on to try to raise that money, but give what you can, really. But just know that when you see the GoFundMe link, this is an attempt to allow, even kids who want to participate in this, Annie. We want everyone who can give to be part of the story, and we'll include everybody's name in our unveiling dedication book. So
Rose, tell us your concept from the uprising of 20,000 to this fundraising effort.
Yeah, this was something that we wanted to tie back to the past, as everybody is doing today so beautifully, that the girls, and we learned yesterday, Ying Chen and I were on a walking tour yesterday of Triangle Fire history, and I didn't know this, that the uprising of the 20,000 back in 1909 was really the uprising of 30,000, but they wanted to discount the women's participants, the men, so they lowered the number to discount the number of women who were in it, whatever, crazy story. So I just learned that yesterday for the first time. So that was an uprising of 20,000, 30,000 voices, and they were heard, and they were able to unionize, except for not at Triangle Factory, and we know what happened a year later. But we're looking for an uprising of 20,000 people who want to be a part of the Triangle Fire Memorial, because as everybody has said so beautifully, we have to remember our generation is finally going to get this done. And that's why we came up with that number, because we felt like at 20,000, if we all gave, we would have all the money we need for the extra steel and the extra masonry. So that's the story there. It's we're always connecting back. We all feel like we would have been working there. As a working woman back then, right. I know I would have probably been in a garment factory.
Right. Yeah, we would have been there. Thank you, Rosie. I see in the room, if he could unmute the camera or whatever, is Burton Baroff. Burton's father, Abraham Baroff, was an early activist of the IGLWU and helped with the 146 on the day of, right after the fire. Burton, it's an honor to have you in the room. If you could turn on your camera, we'd love to see you. Okay, the floor is open for comments and questions, and we are going to start with Ying Chen leading us once again in a phrase memory, either rise like a tiger. Mackenzie, we could skip the slide, I think, because now we just see everybody. And we will just do a call and response after May's call to action. So let's hear it, May. What do we have to memorize today?
Okay, everybody knows this year is the year of the tiger, which should be a year of energy, good health, and strength. And so there are a lot of tiger sayings in Chinese, but Annie liked this one, which means be like a tiger with wings. So you not only have the tiger body, but you add wings, and this tiger can fly. And most of these sayings in Chinese have just 4 words. So this one is Ru Hu. Hu means tiger. Tian Yi, adding wings. So let me say it once again, and you can listen. Ru Hu Tian Yi. Can you say that?
One,
Maybe
two,
repeat.
three.
Woohoo,
Woo-hoo,
10 years. Woohoo,
Yeah,
10
that's
years.
good.
Yi.
Yeah. Ru Hu Tian Yi.
Woo-hoo, 10
Woohoo,
years.
10 years.
Let's say it 3
Woo-hoo,
times
10 years.
and Mackenzie's gonna take a screenshot of us. So May, we're gonna do call and response 3 times after you.
Okay. Ru Hu Tian Yi.
Woohoo,
10 years.
Yi.
Ru Hu Tian Yi.
Woo-hoo, 10 years.
Yi.
And last time, Ru Hu Tian Yi.
Woo-hoo, 10 years.
Yi.
All right, thank you, May. Okay, listen, we have Lulu Lolo, we have Sherry Kane, Andy and Joel. Let's hear from some people. Andy and Joel, do you know why the Perkins Corner is 46th and 9th?
No, I don't. Can you tell us?
Who can
Why is
tell us?
Perkins-
Lulu knows, Lulu knows. Lulu, unmute, Lulu. Everybody unmute when you want to talk.
It's because Frances Perkins worked as a social worker at Hartley House, and that's why. That's the location.
And Lulu, she's a saint. Can you tell us about that? Who knows about her saint?
Oh, that looks like Trasciatti knows that.
Trasciatti, what's up with the sainthood?
Just, it's in the book. Frances Perkins was elevated. She's a holy woman in the Episcopal Church. And that means, as Tomlin Perkins Cockashaw told us the other night, that the Frances Perkins Center, the grounds where she lived much of her life and where, that she loved, is holy ground. And there's an icon of Perkins because of that you can see. There's an image in the book of it. It's a really beautiful icon. And it is because of her compassion and her commitment to the dignity and humanity of all people, and especially working people.
Well, speaking of hallowed ground, we have Annie Valiere here. Annie, tell us about your great aunts, please. Unmute.
Just that she was right there. She probably wasn't at the fire, actually, at the time, but had been working with the young women who worked at the Triangle Fire for a number of years, and followed up after the fire on the streets of the Lower East Side, and also helped to consult and investigate after the fire. And, she was passionate and about the fire, and it helped drive her for the rest of her life too.
Say their names, Annie. People might not know. Annie's in this book writing about her great aunt.
Oh, Rose Schneiderman. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Amazing. All right, who has a question? Let me see, wave at me. Who has something to say? Eddie, help me run the room. I see Kathleen McCormick. Unmute.
This was so incredible. And I wanted to just say that whenever I taught an Italian American literature, film, and popular culture class, my New York students would always say, oh, we respond so well to the Triangle section because we were taken to Triangle as part of a school trip in high school. And then, it just seemed too simplistic, a reason to feel connected. And so after hearing this for a couple of years, I asked my students to try to think more deeply why they connected. And I feel like what you have all just said, oh, I wish I could have had you 10 years ago saying all of this, but gradually the students began to feel a personal connection, began to remember that they were the age of these students, began to remember that they had a grandmother who worked in a garment district. regardless of nationality. And what I think you've brought together so beautifully is that this becomes part of our collective memory as well as part of our future when we open ourselves to the wealth of stories. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Kathleen. I see Audrey Kindred has a question. Okay, Audrey.
Hey, everybody. Actually, it's my sister that had a question, so I want to introduce her, Jessica.
Hi, Jessie.
Hi. I just wanted to say that when I think about the Triangle Fire now, I think about the quote unquote essential workers who were managers at grocery stores or grocery store clerks over these past 2 years, many of whom suffered, many of whom died, and all of whom were essential workers only because they couldn't quit their jobs and still get unemployment. That's what made them essential workers. They were forced to go to work or they would not get money. And so I think about that a lot, about how many people were forced into these unbelievable positions over the past 2 years. And I really connect that to the labor struggles associated with Triangle and every other labor struggle. But I hope that, I guess what I want to say is, I hope that the memorial brings those people in, because I think that it does memorialize them too.
Thank you, Jesse. Andy and Joel, who have worked for more than a decade on this memorial. Here they are, tireless behind the scenes.
Well, you know, if you see behind us, that's a sign from the store on Orchard Street where my grandparents opened the store, you know, before the Triangle Fire. Now, they were merchants.
Shirts.
Sozinski shirts.
They were merchants, but I am sure that given the neighborhood in which they lived, they knew many of the families who lost victims to the fire. Growing up, I never heard about that from my grandparents. It's probably one of those events, you know, at least growing up, that they, you know, that was buried, so to speak. And by the time we had the 50th commemoration of the fire, they were already gone. So, you know, if anything would have brought back the memories of Triangle, it might have been that, but they were already passed away.
My grandmother told me stories about how she was a child worker in the garment industry. She lived in East Harlem for a while. Then, you know, they moved out to Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn. And the family was, you know, basically, you know, rock poor, but strong enough to go to work at young ages. And ties to the union were very strong because my father was a union printer.
Hello from the Francis Perkins Place in Hell's Kitchen.
The renaming. This is Tom Cogashaw, who just jumped. Anyway, I'm able to grab him like 5 minutes before his program starts here on the street.
Yes. Well, we hope you'll stay tuned. It should be an interesting program. It'll be going on for about an hour. Okay. And then we'll move into Hartley House, where my grandmother first lived when she moved here in 1909.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. I'm gonna tune it back to Annie and the group.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So that was Francis Perkins' grandson, who wrote a beautiful chapter in the book. Eddie, you want to just tell us what he wrote about?
It truly exemplifies in its own way, as does every other essay, this encounter between the intimate and the political. And, you know, I just want to recognize like the the magnitude of the task of people like Tomlin and Annie, who had to write about these historical giants and how to extract an intimate story from their memory. So the essay starts with the memory of Tomlin eating arrowroot biscuits with Francis Perkins. And I think in my memory, and anybody who will read the essay, you will forever associate Francis Perkins with a little grandchild and eating arrowroot biscuits.
Thanks. Edvige. Lulu, can I ask you, how did you start getting involved with Triangle? You're the first artist that I know of to really take this on.
Wow. Well, I grew up always hearing from my father. My parents were community activists, children of immigrants in East Harlem. And my father, I grew up with him always saying the doors were locked. They locked the door. And I wrote I wrote an early play about with the scene of the Saracino sisters in the Triangle Factory in 2001. And then when I randomly picked the Saracino sisters' names, and then after David Van Drill's book came out, I found that they in fact lived in East Harlem. And then I heard about chalk, and when I went up to East Harlem to see if anybody was chalking up there in like 2005 or 6, I can't remember. And I started chalking the Saracino girls, and I've just been involved ever since. And then I met Ed Vargas, because I went down to the commemoration and people were giving out flowers, and I said, Mr. Vargas, can you let me have a flower for the Saracino girls? And he did, and every year I'd email him and say, Mr. Vargas, or I'd call him. I'd say, Mr. Vargas, can I have a flower for the Saracino girls? And so that's how I became in charge of the flowers.
And tell us about your work with all the family members of the Triangle workers.
I think came about just, I'd be standing on the corner seeing somebody quietly on the side, and I'd say, are you a family member? This during the commemoration, and that's how I met Diane Fortuna, Suzanne Pred-Beth, Joe Vito's relative, Jane Fazio, and just connected with them all. And I always carry an index card and get people's emails and phone numbers, so we could, keep in touch.
Thanks, Lulu. You keep the New York street alive. That's for sure.
Thank you. Always fun being with you out on the street, Annie.
I want to acknowledge Mackenzie, Kwok, and Steve Zeitlin. So behind the scenes, none of this would happen without the technical wizardry of Mackenzie. Mackenzie, say hello.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for sharing today. I cried so many times, and yeah, this was so moving, and this feels very powerful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we need you, Mackenzie, in the next generation, because I couldn't hit these computer buttons, and I know me, Steve, and Molly, probably between the three of us, we could hit a couple of buttons to make something happen, but with a lot of mistakes. Steve, would you say hello? Steve's the founder of City Law.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, such a beautiful program. I realize that my family name going back was Brodsky, and Sarah Brodsky was one of the people I realized that was in the fire. So I'm going to look into whether she's related to me.
Well, thanks for today and all your work with cultural memory, Steve. Okay, the floor is open for at least 5 or 10 minutes. Diana Malra, welcome. Unmute.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I lost you for a while. I'm about to get in a taxi up to the Francis Perkins dedication. So I didn't want to go on too soon because I need to change my shirt. So I didn't want to get picked while I was sitting here in my bra.
All right, what do you have to say today, Diana?
I have to say, I've got.
We don't need to know what you're wearing right now.
Yeah, well, I want to know what I'm gonna putting on this thing, because if you can see behind me, for people who might not know, I've been involved with the coalition since 2009, I guess before it was even formally that, representing 18-year-old Fanny Hollander. And right behind me, I have my sash. And I'm gonna put this on right now. Otherwise, I'm gonna put it on and attend the dedication. I know Frances Perkins was so instrumental in putting forth so many of the safety precautions, worker precautions because of the Triangle Fire, and I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Diana, and for all your work. I think Frances Perkins was just out of grad school, by the way, when the fire happened, right?
And she happened to see it. It was strange. It was a Saturday, as we all know, and she happened to witness it. And then, of course, she became the secretary, and I still haven't. Hold on.
So there's a lesson. What we witness, what do we do about? She changed the world, Frances Perkins. She just happened to be in the street,
This book weighs about 6 pounds. I still haven't finished reading it, but it's a fantastic book called Madam Secretary. It's all about Frances Perkins. And, I do recommend reading it. You probably all know enough basic stuff about her. But I don't want to leave the group, but I think I'm going to put my shirt on and my Fanny Hollander sash and head up to 46th Street. So
thanks, Diana. Be safe out there, Diana.
Oh, yeah, I always try.
All right. I see a few more hands up. Audrey, do you have your hand still up or no?
Yeah, I do. I wanted to, because we were sort of digging into lineages, I wanted to say, I've worked for ethical culture for many, many years, and one of the kind of founding missions of the founder of ethical culture was this conflict that was happening back then of children working instead of going to school. And so I thought there must be a connection. I mean, this is New York City, right? So where ethical culture was founded. So I did dig, and I found that the founder of ethical culture was Felix Adler, and his sister-in-law was put on the committee for reviewing the fire and making change. Josephine Goldmark. I think, am I remembering her name correctly? I hope so. So I just wanted to mention that, kind of digging into history and making connections.
Thanks, Audrey. Okay, May Chen, what's on your mind? I'm looking back at May.
Oh, no.
This is discussion. Edvige, anyone could jump in. I don't need to have the mic over here.
Yeah, this is a great day. I'm sorry I can't get up to Frances Perkins Street. That would be very cool. But I hope all of you will come to Columbus Park this summer when we celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Chinatown strike in June. Please mark the date, June 25th. That's the date we're aiming to have some cultural and celebration activities. And City Lore is going to hopefully place a plaque in the park as part of their Place Matters.
May, I'm getting an echo from you for some reason, but we got June 25th, Columbus Park, and City Lore will be putting out some info about it.
Hello.
And I see, Burton, I could hear you, I can't see you.
I don't know how I got on, but I.
Tell us about you. Tell us who you are, Burton.
It's a good question. I can tell you that on February 9th, I was 93 years old. How's that?
Wow.
Okay, who am I? My grandfather was Abraham Baroff. He was one of the very, very first founders of the International Ladies Garment Workers Union. And accomplished a great deal in his life. There is a statue of him in Toronto, Canada, for the work he did there for their unions. In any event, his connection to the fire is extraordinary. The bodies of, I don't know how many, over 100, were unrecognizable. The decision was made to put them all in one grave. It never happened. Abraham Baruch didn't allow it to happen. Each and every one of those young women wound up with a grave of her own. In order to gain more specifics, you simply need to Google Abraham Baruch, and you will be sitting there for the next 30 to 45 minutes. There's very little he didn't accomplish. Unfortunately, he died at about 51 or 52 years old, and so he did not have the opportunity to contribute to the growth of the union. I was 2 years old when he died. I have no recollection of him, but I know I have his genes. I'm a bit of a revolutionary myself. I don't believe in capitalism, etc., etc. There's also he wrote a book. It's written in Yiddish, types and something, I forget. I do have a copy of the book and his preface that he wrote. I had somebody who did that for me, translated, but unfortunately that's all I have.
Burton, it's an honor to talk to you. I know there's people in this room who are going to want to call you. And
well, I wish I had more information.
Well, we found a letter your father wrote to Elizabeth Gurley Flynn. MaryAnne, can you say something about that?
Say that again.
MaryAnne will tell you. Listen.
Burton, your grandfather was involved in the
father.
Sorry.
Oh, no.
Grandfather.
Abraham Baruch can't be my father.
Oh, grandfather.
Your grandfather was involved in the campaign to raise money for the Sacco Vanzetti Defense Committee. So Elizabeth.
Is that in the Google stuff?
Yeah, you can Google this. It comes up. It's a digitized letter that he wrote to Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, talking about the ILGWU's process for giving money to organizations. And in this case, it was the Sacco Vanzetti Defense Committee.
Vanzetti, yeah.
So it's very clear that they were friends because
I'm sorry. I need to go back and read all of it again.
Yeah.
It's been some years. After I got a copy of the book, I sort of let up a bit. And I did, though, years ago. Do you folks know about Jacob Potofsky? Jacob Potofsky was the president of the ILGWU for 60 years. What happened was that my grandfather and the other two founders all became physically ill at approximately the same time. Jacob Potofsky was a union, worked for the union. Maybe he ran the situation in Cincinnati, Ohio. And they brought him in And very shortly after he arrived and he was doing lots of the work for them, he was made the president of the union when they all were unable to work anymore. And of course, I knew about him. I knew that he spoke about my grandfather a bit in my and I did speak to him once and asked him about, my grandfather. And of course, he said I didn't get to know him that well because he was ill.
Listen, Burton, thank you. I'm going to be calling you and educating myself about Abraham for sure.
Okay,
I need to wrap up this room because some people need to go who are on the panel.
Thank you, and I'm sorry I went on.
No, Burton, I love you. It's an honor to talk to you, believe me. I'm going to be calling you, and I'm sure others will. All right. I'm going to close the room. I'm going to say goodnight. The meter ran out, Burton. That's the problem. Can you see? Look, look, I ran out of quarters. That's the issue. So, thank you, everybody.